Hello, I'm Sarah Norman, and this is my risk assessment of Lowe v. Cerner Corporation, a case that shows what happens when EHR software design failures, institutional configuration choices, and human factors collide in catastrophic failure. Michael Taylor was a 25-year-old patient who came to Virginia Hospital Center for a routine cholecystectomy. His surgeon, Dr. Booth, ordered continuous pulse oximetry monitoring, henceforth CPOM, intending an immediate start. What happened next was a cascade of system failures. The order entry screen showed the entry time as the scheduled start time, giving Dr. Booth no reason to think anything was wrong. But behind the scenes, her once frequency selection triggered VHC's 10 a.m. pharmacy detail, making the order start the next morning. The order was buried as the 30th of 30 in a batch that Cerner allowed to be signed without individual order review. The anesthesiologist's order for CPOM was only a handwritten staff handoff note, nothing the system could act on. The 9 a.m. vital signs check wasn't done, and at approximately 10:30 a.m., Dr. Booth found Taylor unresponsive without CPOM in place. The risk assessment had 4 parts, and I'm going to go through each of the parts individually. So for the cause and effect analysis, I completed a fishbone diagram using the IHI framework, which identified 5 contributing categories: software design and failure to warn, hospital configuration settings, provider and human factors, nursing and clinical staff, and communication and information flow. The primary contributing category was software design and failure to warn, which set the stage for everything that followed leading up to Taylor's hypoxic brain injury. I also completed a second fishbone diagram using the example based on the Norton v. Argonaut Insurance Company case. It provided a different way to analyze the Cerner case. This diagram also identified the same primary contributing category, which was software design and failure to warn, which only reinforced that the root of this failure was a Cerner design defect, not an institutional configuration failure or a provider error. Next was the 5 whys. They are a root cause analysis tool that keeps asking why until you get to the actual system level failure rather than just stopping at the surface. In this case, it traced a 17.5-hour monitoring gap all the way back to the single software design defect, which was that the order entry screen showed 1 start time while the system defaulted to a completely different scheduled start time. What makes this case particularly striking is that by Y5, there was simply nothing left to catch the error. Every safeguard had already failed. This is the current state flowchart using the IHI process, which maps the actual failure path from order entry all the way through to the discovery of Taylor unresponsive. Every single decision point here resulted in a failure. This is what actually happened. Mapping it out this way made it clear just how many opportunities existed to catch this error and how each one failed in sequence. The solution process flowchart maps the process across 9 sequential steps. There are 6 decision points, and at each decision point, a failure could occur. In thinking about the failures at the decision point, a solution was identified to prevent the failure from occurring. The solutions identified were hospital policies and Cerner redesign. This flowchart served as the basis for the failure mode effects analysis. The failure mode and effects analysis analyzed 9 process steps and identified failure modes for each one, with hazard scores ranging from 6 to 12. The 6 most critical steps, those with a hazard score of 12, are displayed here on the slide. Steps 1 through 5 scored catastrophic for severity and occasional for probability with an eliminate action. Step 9 also scored 12, but with a control action because it is the final step. It can't be eliminated, only controlled with corrective actions. The main failure across all 6 is Cerner's order entry screen, displaying the order entry time as the scheduled start time. Additional contributing factors were VHC's configuration settings and the absence of individual order review requirements. The corrective actions for each step target Cerner design changes and institutional policies, not individual provider behavior. From the risk analysis, I came up with 3 recommendations, and they all point to the same conclusion, that this was a preventable failure. Cerner had already fixed the order entry screen problem at one institution after a 2009 complaint, but chose not to apply it system-wide, nor did they notify other institutions. That decision set the stage for everything that happened to Taylor 7 years later. The institutional recommendations follow from that. VHC needs to know what its own configurations are doing to provider orders. And batch signing without individual order review is an unchecked vulnerability that exists in every Cerner site. Working through this risk assessment reinforced something that's easy to say, but harder to appreciate until you're actually doing it. A risk assessment is only as good as the information you have. This was a court case, which means I had partial secondhand information filtered through legal proceedings. There were gaps that couldn't be filled without inferring beyond the record, and staying disciplined about that was challenging throughout the project. What the tools revealed is that they build on each other. The cause and effect analysis identified where to look. The 5 whys explained why it happened. The flowchart showed how the process should work, and the FMEA asked how each process step could fail. The final takeaway is that vendor software design decisions have direct patient safety consequences that institutions often can't control. What institutions can do is review system configurations and policies to identify potential issues and correct identified ones. These are the references used in my risk analysis, as well as in the creation of this presentation.